Yes, sir. We are fresh to death for this episode of the FTN Fantasy Show. We are doing the ADP reviews, performance reviews, actually, and we look suited and booted with the shades on. And I'm joined here by my co-host, who looks the freshest out there, fresh to death, Mr. Matt Okada. The shades, my friend. Woo!
Listen, Laquan, I'm trying to be on the links right now, and I have to do these performance reviews for these employees, so I'm not happy, but I'll survive, I guess.
Yeah, man, you look good. You look good, man. How was the vacation? 4th of July weekend? Like, what's up, man? Any fireworks? Any
Solid.
sports?
Hot dogs
Okay.
consumed.
Yeah,
Fireworks witnessed. That's all you can ask for, really.
no injuries, ladies and gentlemen. We made it safe.
Yeah.
Us. That's all we care about is us. Like, we came out safe. And we were watching, not participating in the fireworks. But, man, today is going to be a great show, man. Like, this is the episode where we do the reviewed ADPs, where we talk about the good, the bad, and even the ugly. Some of these ADPs just don't make sense right now, but it is July, smack dab, second week of July. Folks are outside right now, turning on that fantasy brain, getting into these drafts. So all these ADPs we are grabbing from Underdog Fantasy, man. And listen, when you sign up, your first deposit, you can get a chance to earn up to $1,000 in bonus cash using the promo code FTN. So please make sure you guys go out there, sign up, get that bonus cash. For that, you know what I was about to say, but more so, let's jump right into it, man. Who was your first guy walking into your office that you need to do a ADP review?
My first employee walking into the office is Mr. George Kittle. And let me tell you something, Laquan. He has been a model employee over the many years in San Francisco, which is obviously where our headquarters are located for this particular player. He has been one of the most productive, consistent tight ends for forever. However, there had been a number of years where he was injured more than we would like, and that kind of knocked him down a little bit. And so last year, he missed a couple games, but not really anything significant. And I don't actually know how this happened. Maybe it was the couple games missed, so the raw totals don't match up. But I think we forget how good he was. He finished below Brock Bowers and Trey McBride in total fantasy points. But if you go by PPR fantasy points per game from weeks 1 through 17, which is the fantasy season, which is all that we really care about, 16.6 points per game for George Kittle was the most among tight ends. Bowers, 15.5, McBride, 15.4. In other words, for the vast majority of the fantasy season, he missed just 2 games, and you slid some other tight end in there just fine while he was on his vacation days. He was the best tight end in fantasy. And yet, for some reason, he is going, unsurprisingly, as the tight end 3. That part makes sense. What doesn't make sense is that he's going in the 4th round, 21 spots behind Bowers and 14 spots behind McBride. Now, I wrote an article earlier this offseason for FTN. I want to get one of the Elite 3. I don't want to leave my fantasy draft this season without one of the Elite 3. If I do, I have some backup plans. Their names mostly rhyme with Schmevin Schmingram. However, I want to get one of these 3. And if I'm trying to get one of these 3, and I'm trying to get the cheapest one who might actually be the best one, it is easily George Kittle. So I am smashing this ADP in the 4th round on what I expect to be a tier 1 tight end who I think is getting undervalued. Nothing really much has changed in San Francisco except Debo's out. So if anything, that could be a boost. He is tried and true. Sign me up. How do you feel?
I'm in on it. That's a great performance. I think he will be leaving your office, first of all, loving the shades, and then fully healthy and confident that he can come out this season and smash that ADP. I'm with you because honestly, I don't want to pay that mid-second round for Brock Bowers. I don't want to pay on the turn in that second round, third round, early third round for Trey McBride when I could just sit back, relax, not panic, and wait until the 4th round to grab my tight end, because at that point, I either got 2 running backs, wide receiver, or I got 2 wide receivers and a running back, or you can go heavy wide receiver. So many roster build differences there, but you're coming away in that 4th round with George Kittle possibly falling into your lap with that same upside that you're getting with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Listen, I'll take the shades off of this. Sign me up. Absolutely sign me up.
It would help me see my screen if I did that.
Yes. Listen, for the audio listeners, please watch us on YouTube, because if you are an audio listener, it's a great experience watching us come up here, talk ball, have fun, man. And listen, for the audio listeners, you probably missed out on Okada's Me, Myself, and Irene when he was making the case for both of these players and going in with the X on your head for going against as the prosecutor and the green check mark. Like this is the work we put in for this show. So if you are an audio listener, please make sure you're tapping into the YouTube at FTN Fantasy. Man, come on, man. This is great. But let's stay in San Francisco. We have a co-worker of George Kittle walking into my house. And as a resident, Rams fan, I usually don't talk great about the 49ers. So there may be a little tension coming into this office with Jennings coming and sitting in front of me, and I'm giving him an ADP review. I absolutely love it, and here's why. Now, last season, Jennings, he put on a show, 113 targets, and I really want to emphasize on that. 113 targets for a player that really didn't have much opportunity in his previous times with San Francisco. But when we look how he was able to step in when asked, when his name was called, to step up, and show out, that's exactly what he did. No CMC, Brandon Ayuk holding out, and Brandon Ayuk, to be honest, before the injury, he didn't look great. He didn't look like he was a fantasy stud how he was being drafted. But looking at Jennings at wide receiver 36, this is the early 6th round where you can lock him up as a wide receiver 2 or 3 or flex. This is where you look at, how am I going to anchor my combination of wide receivers earlier in the early rounds that I go and grab him? Now, Jennings, man, when you compare him in those first 7 weeks with Brandon Ayuk, he was still able to have the same amount of catches. He still was able to have more yards than Brandon Ayuk with 1 less game played. And when you look at the tape, when you watch Jennings playing, it's just like, how did I miss out on this guy? This guy's a baller. This guy has so much versatility in this game. When I had to go look up the stats over there on NFL Pro, the next gen stats over there. And I like to look at guys that are versatile, and to see his production out of the slot, my God, chef kiss, 2.9 yards per route run, which was the best among all wide receivers running out of the slot. And that includes the fantasy darling right now in the fantasy streets, McConkey. So when you see that, you're like, oh, I thought this guy was just an exclusive out wide guy. No, he's productive on both fronts. Now, when you look at the opportunities going into the season, CMC, question mark. Maybe still banged up. You look at Brandon Ayuk, we might not see him until October. So when you're looking in the draft, I want the upside to have where I don't have to worry about any of the question marks around him as a talent and production and as opportunity. You're looking at possibly the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver 1. And that is really, really what I want to stamp, the wide receiver 1 for at least the early portion of the season. But he's a target earner, Okada. 27% target per route run in that first 7 weeks versus Brandon Ayuk's 24% targets per route run. So you're looking at Brock Purdy building this chemistry with a big body wide receiver, with a guy that is able to be open and gain those yards. I would look at that Rams game, man, week 3. He had 175 yards. We still won, but I was a little shook of that. This guy's getting hot. He's going out there performing on top level tiers, man. And he finished the season with 10 end zone targets with your guy that you just spoke about, who just left your office, with George Kittle. So there's a red zone presence there. There's a target earner there. There's a guy that has made his presence felt on the offense. And I think moving into this next year, me being able to get him as wide receiver 3 or flex on my roster, that just anchors and makes my wide receiver core so much stronger and so much confident going out of the draft, man. What you thinking, Okada?
This is a tough one for me, Laquan, and I'll tell you why. Jennings was great this last year. This performance review that we're having right now, talking about his performance over this last year, incredible. However, before that, I think he was maybe a janitor somewhere on the first floor. Maybe he was
he was in the mail room. He was in the mail room. We all work our way.
Maybe he was in the mail room. he was doing diddly squat for the organization. I'll tell you that much right now. So my main question here is, and I'm curious if you've seen any rumblings in training camp, any words from Shanahan and co. I'm just curious, like, how much of this was a fluke that was based around Brandon Ayuk being terrible and then getting injured. Ricky Pearsall, well, you know what happened to him. It was a strange mess of circumstances that it seems led to Juwan Jennings having this amazing breakout from absolutely nowhere. Mind you, by the way, it's not like he's a third-year, second-round wide receiver. He's a fifth-year, seventh-round wide receiver. So if what we saw last year was real, and I will say, I do think some of his efficiency numbers that you brought up are a little bit inflated by Kyle Shanahan and his offense because he makes everything so efficient. However, you can't put up that numbers that good without also being a good wide receiver. So, flowers to Jennings there, at least to some degree. But how much of this was a fluke and how much of it will he hold down going into another year where maybe Pearsall takes a step forward? I don't know what's going to happen with Ayuk. I'm not a fan of Ayuk. I will say that. I am a fan of Pearsall, Kittle, and McCaffrey. So, how many mouths can Purdy feed, and will Jennings be one of the main ones? The nice thing is, like, his ADP reflects some of that risk, which is your point, in that you can get him at a decent value, and a lot of that is baked in. And hopefully, if he plays up to what he showed he can play up to, he will be a big get at this ADP. So I'm like tentatively bought in. I don't know if I'm going to give him a raise, but I'll sign him for another year.
You had a good year. You might not get a raise, but that's good. That's the thing is, though, like, I don't think the fantasy streets, like, his ADP hasn't caught up to the situations that's around him because the question marks around CMC and with Brandon Ayuk injured and the unknown of Ricky Pearsall, I would think his ADP will be a little bit higher. That's why I was a little surprised to see where it's at in the range where he's going. Like, he's coming off the board where Chris Olave is going, Calvin Ridley. These guys still have question marks around them on a production standpoint and a health standpoint. But I'm looking at Juwan Jennings. It's like, there's proven talent here. There's proven opportunity here. And it's a Kyle Shanahan's offense, and how you hit the nail on the head. It's an efficient offense. So everybody's going to be utilized properly. Everybody's going to be where they need to be, and there will be roles assigned. I was so surprised to see his production out of that slot, to where his numbers were just like completely out of the water, where it's like, oh, so you were actually balling. You were actually going out there doing some things that was just like, oh, okay, you must be him. You must be that guy. And I love his confidence, going to OTAs and minicamp, what he was telling the coaching staff. He looks at himself as the wide receiver one. So, Okada, who else is stepping into your office?
Okay, this one is just absurd, Laquan. So I brought him up on our podcast before. I will do so again. I expect all you listeners go out there and fix this ADP by yourselves, because this is absurd. DeAndre Swift. Okay. Last year, we put him on a team project with a bunch of boobs. They were terrible. You know those projects back in school where nobody would do anything except for one person, and then they would all get there on the day and give the presentation, and everybody else would be like, "Oh yeah, we totally know what's happening."
You can tell who did the work and who didn't when you're up there.
Correct.
Doing the presentation. The one guy with the hands in his pocket, he didn't do diddly squat.
No. And everybody else on this team did diddly squat. However, DeAndre Swift, amidst all of that, still managed to finish as the RB19. That was with a terrible offensive line. One of the worst in the league, which has been heavily rebuilt. They invested in it big time. That was with terrible offensive coordinators. We started out with Shane Waldron, who, if you've seen any clips of players who've played for Shane Waldron talking about him, he's bad. Okay, one of the worst in the league.
Supposed to be a QB.
And then he was so bad. He was so bad he got fired. Okay, now we have Ben Johnson coming in, who's potentially, arguably, the best offensive mind in the NFL. Maybe after like the Andy Reid, maybe in the Sean McVay conversation. I think most people would have him up there. We had a rookie quarterback who was spotty at best. He had some flashes, but it wasn't enough. He'll be taking another step forward. The offense was so bad, no team in the league saw fewer red zone drives. So he had very little scoring opportunity. All of that, and he was the RB19. Now, all of that improved, and his ADP is the RB26.
Wow.
Can someone make this make sense for me? Like, seriously. I would not expect him to drop anywhere below RB19, and I will be ranking him above that because everything improved. But his ADP has dropped 7 spots, multiple rounds from where he finished last year. And the team did not bring any competition. And Laquan, I know you've created a tiny bit of hype about Kyle Monangai.
A little bit. That's
Bro
it.
is a 7th rounder who, if he had gone to any other team, we would not even know his name. But because he went to this place where we were sure they were going to draft a running back early because we thought they wanted to fill in more of that depth around DeAndre Swift, but they didn't. If he had gone anywhere else, we wouldn't care. He went here, so we're like, oh, maybe this guy could do something. He's not going to do anything. The one guy who might do something is Roschon Johnson, but we've seen a bunch of him in the NFL. I think he's going to be a good complementary piece to Swift, kind of like a David Montgomery light for Ben Johnson. But DeAndre Swift is going to be the Jahmyr Gibbs for Ben Johnson, and he's going to be the heavy version, not the light version that Roschon Johnson is going to be. So you're telling me I'm getting a better, potentially much better version of last year's RB19, but I'm getting him at RB26 price. There are a lot of these situations, a lot of these ADPs we'll talk about, where I can see the argument. Like with Kittle. Okay, he's been injured a lot. We don't know if we can rely on him. McBride and Bowers, we feel like we can rely on them more, which, by the way, don't really even believe because the injury bug hits everybody. Juwan Jennings. Someone else might step up in that offense, and he might not actually be the wide receiver one. I get it. I do not get it with DeAndre Swift. This makes no sense. Stop it. Draft him 1, 2, 3 rounds earlier. I mean, you don't have to because you can still get him at this price, but that's where he should be going. Massive raise for DeAndre Swift. Heck, I'm giving him the whole building, CFO, whatever you want. Can you talk some sense into me, Laquan, or do you agree fully here?
No, I fully agree. And I don't think folks are really keeping their eye on DeAndre Swift because, like, they're going off of recency bias. Like, they seen a bad product out there. He didn't get that big return. And I even think, going into last season, DeAndre Swift wasn't like an expensive back. So it wasn't like he was going out there getting drafted in the earlier rounds. It wasn't like he was out there, getting drafted over some of the guys that leaped over him. But it's more so of like, still finished as a top 20 running back in a terrible offense with a rookie quarterback. With now you insert Ben Johnson on the sticks, the ceiling, it just gets raised. The arrow is pointing up. And this is somebody he has not chemistry, but he has a previous relationship with in Detroit. And people, when we talk running backs, we love PPR leagues. We love the pass catching upside. Saw 70 targets in a Ben Johnson-led offense in 2022. So what are we doing? Look, I understand some folks' recency bias, but this DeAndre Swift ADP does not make sense, even in the middle of July. I would expect it to correct itself after the draft because they didn't go high in the draft and draft a running back like we thought they were doing, but it did not. It stayed put. And if anything, come August, if he's still here, Okada, I think, we're coming out with a league winner here. Like, I think we could stamp that because he's going to be making so many running back combinations early in the draft so much stronger. If you can get away with a Derrick Henry, you can get away with a Breece Hall, and then you slap a DeAndre Swift to that, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantasy stud. Now, a running back that's walking into my office, I'm on the same page. I just have no idea. I mean, how's this guy going under the radar? How is this guy going out there and being drafted in the 6th round? James Conner, welcome to the show. James Conner is a guy that, we all have our priors with. He's injury prone. This is okay to stamp him, but he had his first full season last year. And with that first full season, I do think there was a little fire lit under his butt. And when we see that, that kind of motivates people. Competition motivates everyone. When you bring in somebody like Trey Benson with the high expectations that he was, you're expecting him to get involved. But no, James Conner said, stiff arm, stay where you're at. You're the RB2. I got this. I am the workhorse. And that's exactly what James Conner is. And he's going in the 6th round. I need to emphasize that. He's going in the 6th round. You're telling me I could wait into the 6th round to get a RB1 workhorse in the Cardinals offense, which is a pretty damn good offense of a rushing attack, where you have Kyler Murray, where you have James Conner, who's able to still be explosives. Now, Okada, did you know he was top 5 in rushes of 10+ yards last season?
He was very explosive.
I'm like, where was this? I've watched a lot of Cardinals games, but he just kind of went under the radar. And it's like, oh, so he still got the juice, and he gave us a healthy season. Wow. Did you know that he had 6 games of 100+ yards, which was also top 5 amongst all the running backs? So I'm like, he's still hitting those high ceilings. He could still have those spike weeks. Oh, Okada, did you know he had over 1,500 scrimmage yards?
Oh,
James Conner. And I'm like, hold up. We're sitting on a diamond right now. This is a diamond in the rough. This is cold, hard cash just sitting in the trash right now. I am so excited about making my running back room even stronger, slapping a James Conner to my Breece Hall or to my Derrick Henry or even my a freaking Genty in the 1st round if you get that aggressive, because you're sitting here looking at what James Conner provides and what he can do for your roster. He is the anchor. There is very little risk of getting him in the 6th round as your RB2 or whatever you do. I'm just saying he is valued at an RB2, RB3, but he could be a stamp as an RB1 if you choose to go heavy wide receiver, tight end, quarterback before the 6th round. So that is my case for somebody that is just sitting with complete chef kiss value.
I think James Conner is one of the most underrated running backs in the NFL. So let me start with that. Also, you asked me a number of questions about, did I know James Conner did this? I actually did know James Conner did all those things because I just wrote a player profile on him. And I hit a lot of those points that you brought up. He was also, you hit on the big plays. He was 4th in explosive run rate among all qualified running backs and 6th in avoided tackle rate. We don't think of him like that. Like, I feel like everybody thinks of him as a plotter and like he'll score touchdowns because he's kind of a good bang it in
and
back.
He had 400 receiving yards. Like, he had 400 plus receiving yards. Like, this is a pass catcher as well. What are we doing?
I think for some reason, I'm not exactly sure why, the NFL community and the fantasy community consistently undervalues James Conner. Now, I will bring this up. I'm not trying to get an HR violation against me for ageism, which I'm pretty sure would happen if I actually said this.
Highly illegal, Okada.
Yeah, you can't do this. However, in our particular profession, Laquan, getting older is a bit of a problem. And my guy is 30 years old. Also, there's these running back cliffs where running backs tend to fall off pretty majorly. Now, interestingly enough, Conner has gotten past that cliff because it's usually around 27 or 28. And he hasn't really fallen off, which is something to be applauded. There is another cliff that comes usually around 1,500 career carries, which he's not at yet and will hit probably midway through this season. So there are concerns for me with the cliffs. The age and the career workload are concerning to a degree. Now, Conner has shown he can beat those molds because he had one of his best seasons of his career last year, well past the age cliff. So I think the question is pretty much just exclusively with James Conner. Do you believe he will beat these cliffs and continue to be a better than he should be running back, or do you think he'll finally hit that cliff and fall off? This is like the Derrick Henry conundrum, kind of. Now, Derrick Henry, I've given up. I think I've said this on the pod. I've given up trying to predict the cliffs with Derrick Henry because he's not human. Maybe James Conner's not human. I'm not sure. I just don't think there's any chance he finishes anywhere near this ADP. I think he either doesn't get hurt and doesn't fall off either of these cliffs, and he's an borderline RB1 again. Like, I just don't see how that doesn't happen. Or he gets hurt, misses a bunch of time, or just like suddenly looks like Najee Harris and runs for 3.7 yards per carry and doesn't have any explosivity. And Trey Benson takes over, and all of a sudden James Conner's like the RB40. I don't see any world in between. So I think this is just up to drafters to say, which one do you believe in, and draft him accordingly. And I'm more likely to believe in the former, where he's going to outperform this ADP. So I like picking him here.
Definitely. Because, man, I just be like looking at some of these ADPs and I look at the players that go before him and then I'm like, how? How did we do this? But it's fine. Sometimes the fantasy streets, they gift us with prize possessions. But with that said, we got to pay the bills. This podcast is brought to you by DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 best ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of $15 million. That's 2 chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for a gambling problem. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. One per customer. Enter the Best Ball $15 million headliner contest by September 4th, 2025 to get one bonus entry. $20 entry fee required. Reward expires in 30 days. See terms at DraftKings.com/NFL-best-ball, sponsored by DraftKings. And we are back now to get to the bad and the ugly. Some of these ADPs, they just don't make sense to me, Okada. And I feel as though a lot of people are going to be feeling that burn. And when you feel that burn, a lot of fantasy rosters could fall and crumble and fall apart. So, Okada, I'm going to start off with one. I mentioned his name earlier, the fantasy darling right now. And usually when the fantasy darlings go out there and they get all this hype and they get all the love and you see the timelines just completely just echo chambered with Lad McConkey. There's some huge risk here. And with that risk, right, I'm just asking a simple question. What if he hit his ceiling? And I ask that with confidence because we're looking at a Chargers offense that made a huge emphasis and implied their identity of this offense to the run game. So Lad McConkey, great. He had 7 touchdowns. He had over 80 catches. I mean, look, I am so proud that Lad McConkey put the team on his back, how he wrapped up the back end of that season. I think people, they have their recency bias goggles on right now. They're looking at that Texans game where he had 197 yards. And I understand that he has that ability to hit that ceiling, to have those spike weeks, but there's been some additions. When you make an emphasis on the run game, Okada, and when you look back to that first 5 weeks that Chargers offense was running with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, Justin Herbert was averaging 22 pass attempts per game. Bottom of the table. The Chargers, they were second in rush percentage, meaning in run plays. They were very heavy on the run. This is the identity of Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. This is what they want the Chargers to be. They want to be able to run the ball, drain the clock. They have a quarterback that can execute, get the points early in the first half, and then the second half, they want to run the ball down your throat. And if they score, they score. And they have the tools. They have the players in-house now with Amarian Hampton and Najee Harris. The pass volume could drop on Lad McConkey for 2 reasons. Obviously, what I just explained with the run, but when you add in Trey Harris, the prototype X that you want, this brings in a variable they didn't have last season. Quentin Johnson, I mean, we could chalk it up, right? I mean, it's pretty much, your performance review is down the drain. You are no longer an employee here on my fantasy rosters. And I definitely think that you add in a factor that there was no really any other target competition there last year outside of Quentin Johnson, but Will Disley, I guess, could be the third option there. These are names that we're talking about compared to a guy situationally had the greatest performance he could probably have as a rookie. But it's a new year. It's a new chapter. We have to look forward to what the stabilization of this Chargers offense and what could possibly be. There is huge risk taking him off the board before a T. Higgins, before a Tyreek Hill, before A.J. Brown. I have seen this. And even in debate, people were thinking about, hey, maybe I should take him over Drake London. There's so many red flags there because people are willing to go running back in that first round. And then in that second round, they're willing to have Lad McConkey as their wide receiver 1. Okada, you got to talk to me. Did I get this performance review wrong? Like, what am I doing?
Okay. Listen. This is why we have two CEOs here at this company, so that we can give both sides of the performance review, and our employees don't run out the door crying if they didn't deserve it. I see your argument, which is, and it makes sense, what Lad McConkey thrived in last year is not what the Chargers want to be under Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. And their moves this offseason have further emphasized that, bringing in the running backs they did. They want to be a run-first team that plays good defense. However, I will also say they have Justin Herbert. So I do wonder whether we get a little bit too attached to the run-first thing because, you know, this is not Colin Kaepernick. And no disrespect to Colin Kaepernick, he was one of the best rushing quarterbacks ever, and he had some amazing seasons and some playoff runs that were crazy, but he's not the passer that Justin Herbert is. I don't think that, while I think LA will index more into the run, I don't think they're going to abandon the pass completely. So then the question is, well, how much are they going to abandon it? Because if they abandon it enough, it's going to be very hard for Lad to repeat. And that is fair. I understand that situational argument. The problem that I have is that there is a talent counter argument that has to be considered. And you made the question, or you posed the question fairly. Is this the ceiling? Have we already seen the ceiling for this kid? So I went while you were talking and I pulled up the statistics. Here is the list of guys, rookie wide receivers in history, who have hit 80 catches, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns, all of which Lad McConkey hit. Michael Clayton in 2004. Now, Michael Clayton never had another season this good. So we're starting off, okay, maybe Lad McConkey might have had his best season ever. Maybe that's not Michael Clayton. That doesn't excite me at all. All right, well, let's get to the rest of the list. Justin Jefferson, Malik Nabers, Anquan Bolden, Michael Thomas, Brian Thomas Jr., Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase. So we're talking about a list of either Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers, most of them quite recent, obviously because of the way that rookie wide receivers have broken out significantly of late. But that is a list that has my tie in a knot because good gracious. I mean,
wow.
Is Lad McConkey a product of more than they wanted to pass last year? Yes, probably. However, you don't put up numbers like that without being unbelievably talented. So I think that the odds that he's hit his peak, given that it was his rookie year, are low. Now, I will say this is easier in Dynasty because in Dynasty, I think there will be future years for Lad McConkey, Los Angeles. Maybe he'll go elsewhere where we won't have the concerns that you brought up, and he might be a 140 catch guy somewhere. Like that's very much within the realm of possibility. But we're not talking about Dynasty right now. We're talking about redraft 2025, where he is getting drafted as a borderline wide receiver 1, and that is an expensive price. I will buy into the talent and be willing to draft him around here, and I have done so in underdog best ball drafts a good amount. But I will also say, around that same pick, I have gone other directions to diversify because I do think there is a chance that McConkey is still good, but just doesn't have the volume because the offense shifts down and is more like wide receiver 15 or 18, which would still be good and useful, but does not return value on this ADP. That part of it, I get. The talent part of it has to be taken into account. I will draft him here sometimes, and I will go other ways other times.
That's my only argument. If you were well aware of the risks and understand roster building at this, my only issue with Lad is that I'm not taking him as my wide receiver 1. I can't do it. I can't do it. If I go running back in the first round, I feel like I'm screwed if I come out of the second round with Lad McConkey, because there is a roster build, strategy, and a lot of other people that have different strategies, but I feel like that's the nastiest strategy, treating him as your wide receiver 1. I feel like there's so much risk there, and you're right, the dude is talented, but I just posed the question, maybe he hit a ceiling, just maybe, because you named a bunch of freak Hall of Fame athletes, and I don't look at Lad's game as a Justin Jefferson or Anquan Bolden or even a Malik Neighbors. That is freak athlete territory of a tier. And again, situational talent. I do think that plays a factor. But Okada, somebody that I actually do like, but you don't. So who's coming into your office?
Okay, well now we can switch the good cop, bad cop routine.
This is kind of like, do you watch The Office, Okada? This is kind of when Dwight Schrute and Jim were both like co-managers, you know? Yeah, I feel like this is what it is. Like whoever is Dwight, whoever is Jim, it doesn't matter, but this is what that feels like.
Okay, well let me put on my Dwight hat here. Bears beats bad wide receiver value. Garrett Wilson is going as the wide receiver 16 in the third round. And I'll start it off. You know what? Let's start positive, okay? Because then we can just go downhill from there and it'll feel way better. I get the reasoning. You know how earlier we talked about DeAndre Swift? I didn't get the reasoning. I get the reasoning with Garrett Wilson. He has been a target monster, and there is very little else on this team to take targets from him. Third in targets over the last 3 years in the entire NFL. Not on the Jets, not in the AFC East, not in the AFC. In the entire NFL, third in targets. And I get that. That's where the good ends. Let's start going downhill. Over that 3-season span when he was third in targets, Laquan, so his volume is better than everybody in the league except for 2 guys. 13th in fantasy points, 30th in touchdowns. Okay? The man does not score, and the man's fantasy points have been obviously heavily inflated by this volume. Let me just ask you a simple question, okay? And we'll get to the rest, and I'll let you respond in full. But let me just answer me this simple question. Is he going to see the volume that he's seen over the last 3 years with Justin Fields at the quarterback position, Laquan?
No.
There is zero chance. So that volume that has carried his production is going to come down. He squeaked into wide receiver 1 range last year with Aaron Rodgers on 154 targets. That is not happening again. And I like Justin Fields, and Aaron Rodgers was not great last year. But still, that was a future Hall of Fame pass first quarterback with crazy volume. That is not what we're getting out of Justin Fields. And I will finish with this, and then you can rebut. Okay. If you look at the lines, the betting lines for season totals, you can go on to Underdog, in fact, and do this. And I strongly suggest you do. Go look around at the players that you're interested in or that you have question marks about. Go to the Underdog NFL season tab and look at the pick'ems for their stats, okay? Let me give you some examples, Laquan. Cortland Sutton, these are his lines for the season. 899.5 yards, 6.5 receiving touchdowns. He's going as a wide receiver 27 at the 4-5 turn. Jalen Waddle, 949.5 yards, 5.5 touchdowns. Wide receiver 29 in the 5th round. Jawan Jennings, your boy.
Yes, sir.
924.5 yards, 5.5 receiving touchdowns, going as a wide receiver 34 at the 5-6 turn. Now you say, Okada, what is Garrett Wilson? I'll tell you, Laquan, 949.5 yards, 4.5 touchdowns. So that is in the ballpark of yardage as all those other guys and fewer touchdowns. That is the betting line, the expectation betting line for these receivers. But he's going as the wide receiver 16 in the 3rd round. The math does not add up. It makes absolutely no sense. The fantasy community is way over-indexed on Garrett Wilson because of what he's done on volume. But the smart people know he is not hitting those numbers, or he's hitting around the numbers that the betting lines are set at, and is going to be a major disappointment. I am a gazillion miles out. I will not have a single shred of Garrett Wilson this year in fantasy.
That is a huge red flag. I do like him. I do like him because it's the same case that we make for Lad. You believe in the talent. And I believe there were some ups and downs these recent years, even though he had the volume with the quarterback play. Believe it or not, I think this is an upgrade at the quarterback position. Not a sense of saying that Justin Fields is a better passer than Aaron Rodgers, but I think Justin Fields is a more of a threat, a more dangerous threat at the quarterback position for this Jets offense of what this new identity is going to be. So where you hit at on the touchdowns, I think there's going to be way more scoring opportunities for this Jets offense than they've had in the last 4 or 5 seasons. So looking at the opportunity to hit on more touchdowns, may not have the yards, he might not hit that line, but he may be ballpark of that line. But if I can get Garrett Wilson with 1,100 yards, but 7 touchdowns, I'm willing to pay that wide receiver 16 price just based on he's going in the 3rd round. He essentially would be my wide receiver 2. I think this is where he should have been adjusted the previous years with bad quarterback play with, that type of value in return as a wide receiver 2 instead of us putting him in that 1st round how we did in previous seasons. So I think the price adjustment, it could be a little bit lower because again, you're matching the Vegas odds, you're matching the Vegas numbers, and the math ain't mathing because you're damn right. Because when you hear Jawan Jennings, wide receiver 31, 30 something, and then you see similar numbers, if not less than or more, at wide receiver 16, that does bring me a little back. Like, oof, something ain't right. Something smells a little fishy. But I'm just going based off of the talent that I'm willing to roll the dice on Mr. Garrett Wilson this season because I'm hoping for more touchdowns. That's always been the problem with him is touchdowns. And that goes to the quarterback play. It goes to scoring opportunities, getting down to the red zone, striking distance. You can't do that with a Zach Wilson. I mean, it was up and down with Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers brought his homie in like, hey, man, I need you here, bro. I need to get something done, But the volume's there. The talent is there. That's 2 major boxes checked off that hopefully you can get that return, but don't treat him as a wide receiver 1.
I want to ask a quick question to Quan, because when you were talking about this, it made me think, and I'm curious how you would weigh in on this.
Yeah.
Do you believe Devontae Smith is a talented wide receiver?
Yes.
Do you believe he's in a similar tier of talent to Garrett Wilson or not?
Ooh. Similar tier of talent. I want to say yes. I want to say yes because I believe Devontae Smith could be a 1 on another team. He's just situationally a 2 to AJ Brown, so he's a great compliment. But I do think he could be a 1 on a team and have that same opportunity as Garrett Wilson from a talent standpoint. Yes.
So this is exactly what I'm interested in my point. I love that you put it that way. Devontae Smith, I think, could be a 1 on a team because I do believe he's in the same talent tier as Garrett Wilson. However, he shouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? He should not be a 1 on a team because it's not as good for him and it's not as good for the team. He is far better suited as the best 2 or one of the best 2s than he is as the 1. I think Garrett Wilson is the same guy, and I think we've all tricked ourselves into believing he should be a 1 because he's been the only one for the Jets, except for that stretch with Devontae Adams, obviously, which, by the way, I think was a much better situation for Garrett Wilson to be in. He's similarly undersized as Devontae Smith. I don't think he's going to hit that touchdown upside, the 10-plus touchdown upside, because I just don't think he's that kind of guy. I think he's Devontae Smith, and I think we've all tricked ourselves into thinking he's a wide receiver 1. I think he should be a 2. And maybe this is crazy. Maybe I'm, losing my mind here.
Is this an Ohio State thing?
Yeah. Well,
because I'm thinking
Smith's going as a wide receiver 26. I don't know.
That's a steal. I'm looking at it like this because along with Garrett Wilson, Ohio State alum, Chris Olave fits that bag as well. He's treated as a 1. He's always pushed up in ADP, except for this year because of the concussions and not availability and everything else. But then we look at JSN with a similar ADP as Lad McConkey in that 2nd round, also Ohio State guy. I don't know. Maybe these guys are just strong 2s that complement a actual 1. And I think Garrett Wilson falls right into that bucket. Like, I think people need to wake up. Okada, you might have been like the oracle here. Just wake up and look at what we're actually getting. And, man, I might agree with you, man. I might agree with you. I think his ADP is a little inflated. You got this off. This was a Dwight Schrute, a great ADP review here, a performance review that you just nailed, my brother. I mean, geez, you got to get the mustard yellow shirt, man. That would have been perfect.
Oh,
I got the gym
one.
white and the black. Oh, we got to run this ADP review back.
Okay, we'll run it back.
Get the mustard. You got to get the mustard shirt, man. If you're going to be Dwight, killing it
and
like
the glasses.
this. In the glasses. Now, there's somebody walking in my office where I am just so confused. And this is what leaves, people that are coming outside for the fantasy drafts, the league meetings and everything. And when they see ADPs like this with Tetero McMillan at wide receiver 21 Okada. Now, if you were somebody that's in and out of the fantasy timelines or in and out of football news, around April, Tetero McMillan was a terrible wide receiver 1 prospect. Everybody was putting Travis Hunter above him. Everybody was putting other wide receivers like Jaden Higgins or even Trey Harris above him. He was supposed to be bad. He didn't run at the combine. He's slow. He's not healthy. You hear all the negative things. But then as soon as he gets drafted to the Panthers, his ADP starts to get inflated because we start tagging him with this wide receiver 1. Now, I'm a little concerned because Bryce Young, I think he's a good quarterback. I think he showed life. I think he showed a great ground to build on, a great foundation to say, hey, maybe he could step up and this Panthers offense can thrive and have some fantasy relevant wide receivers here. But he's entering a very crowded room. There's investment in Xavier Legette. Adam Thielen, old man Thielen, is still out there balling. He was a top 12 wide receiver coming back from injury last season. So if we want to talk recency bias, let's keep it the same energy with everybody else. Adam Thielen is still going out there as the most chemistry, well-rounded veteran that Bryce Young can trust as a passing target. And look, I understand there's hype around the new rookies that come into the building, but I feel as though where he's going in drafts, Okada, like you can't sit here and try to sell me that he has more upside than a DJ Moore or even a DK Metcalf, a guy that you were very high on. I feel as though this is wrong, straight up wrong. Like I don't get the hype. I don't get the situation because last time I checked, the Panthers are a bad offense. There may not be as many scoring opportunities for him to get this return, to have a higher upside, to have a better fantasy finish than some of the names that I'm staring at where he's going. Mike Evans. I think old man Mike Evans might surpass him by a large gap in the points per game basis because he's an actual one of his team. There is nothing in stone right now that Tetero McMillan's coming in to be this savior of this Panthers offense. This ADP does not make sense to me because even if I wanted to pivot to a different position, he's going over James Cook, Amari and Hampton. He's going over guys where I feel as though that can strengthen your roster, that can hit higher ceilings and higher peaks, that have been proven veteran talent, than a guy that's just coming in with question marks that had a bad rookie prospect campaign from the draft analysts, from media, from everybody on the timeline in the fantasy streets to be going this high, to be looked at as this Panthers wide receiver 1. Am I off? Did I get this wrong, Okada?
Okay. I'm gonna level with you, Laquan. Tet McMillan is one of my confusion points, like my fog cloud points in ADP this year. Not in the sense of why the heck is he going there? That doesn't make any sense. Just more in the sense of, I don't know how I feel about this. And I think this is the reason why. And maybe some of your arguments will land with me and I'll come to a decision here. But this is my issue. If you look at the guys going in the 30s, so he's going at 39 overall. These are the guys going in the 30s leading up to Tet McMillan. Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Josh Allen, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Lamar Jackson, Mike Evans, Jaden Daniels. Then you hit Tetero McMillan. And then you get George Kittle right after that, DJ Moore, James Cook, DK Metcalf. And I'm like, my level of excitement over all those guys, and I don't even love all those guys. I don't love Mike Evans this year in particular.
Yeah.
But all those guys give me way more excitement than Tet McMillan. But then I look at the guys that come slightly after him and after the, Kittle, Moore, Cook, Metcalf. Then you get to Omarion Hampton. Yeah, I like him. He's got a Najee Harris there that'll probably take some work, but I like him. I'd probably draft him over Tet McMillan. Xavier Worthy? No, I hate Xavier Worthy. Jameson Williams? I mean, there's a chance, but it's a big shot in the dark. I'd rather take the targets with Ted McMillan. Jalen Hurts, you get to another quarterback if you want to go quarterback this early and you didn't get one of the other guys, sure. Devontae Smith, Cortland Sutton, George Pickens. Now we're into these wide receiver, like clear wide receiver twos or guys who I don't believe in the target count. I do believe in the target count for Ted McMillan. You mentioned the other guys on that roster who they've invested in, and Adam Thielen, who they didn't have to invest in, but has, for some reason, played way above expectation while he's been there. I don't really believe in them much to threaten Ted McMillan for the wide receiver 1 role. Now, what will that role entail in Carolina? That's part of my confusion point. Like, is he going to see 140 targets? Well, it's probably going to be the case that he returns value there at this ADP if he does. Is he going to see 110, 120 targets? And is Bryce Young not going to take a major step forward? Well, then you're not going to return 80 value at this ADP because he's not going to have the efficiency or the volume. I like Bryce Young, but that's a big risk. The rest of the offense is a big risk. So it's a lot of question marks for me here, whether or not this is the right spot for him. I don't like when I look at the guys ahead of him, I'm like, no way. But then when I look at the guys after him, I'm like, I mean, kind of. So maybe this is the right spot for me, but it's risky. There's a lot of risk. So I could easily see you going a different direction with any of the other positions that you mentioned. If I haven't picked a tight end and I'm looking between George Kittle and Ted McMillan, it's not even a question. So like in that sense, I can't agree with this ADP. So maybe I'm just like avoiding needing wide receiver at this particular draft spot and hoping I can go a different direction.
Exactly, sir, because that's just my confusion. I don't have to make this pick with such confusion. And listen, I believe in Adam Thielen being a factor in here very, very strong to, if not be the wide receiver 1, but he's going to be on the coattails because we got to remember when Adam Thielen first got there, he had 137 targets in 2023. Yep. And it's just like old man Thielen can still go out there and earn those targets. And I think with a Bryce Young who's developing and has struggled, he's going to lean on what is comfortable to him, his number 1 target. And you look at last season, nobody had over 100 targets because the ball is just being distributed. He got benched and Andy Dalton comes in. Like there's a lot of still building and confusion. And there's nothing in solid stone that we have a proven Panthers offense, man. And I just feel like if George Kittle's there, smash. If I see Devontae Smith going a round later than him, I rather that. Yeah. I rather a proven high-end wide receiver 2 on an offense that I know he is a functioning factor of this offense. It's nothing indicating that it's in stone that Tetairoa McMillan will be the function of this offense. Adam Thielen has proven to be the function of this offense is my only argument against that. Now, last but not least, our last review today, man. I'm really curious to see how you go about this because I love me some Baker Mayfield.
Okay. Well, let me start it out by agreeing with you fully, Laquan. I love me some Baker Mayfield. This guy brings the culture to our work office. He has done his job year in and year out. Last year, incredible. He was amazing. Finished as a top 10 quarterback, top 6 quarterback. Here's my concern, okay? Here at whatever corporation we are, Fantasy Football Drafters United, we follow the math, okay?
Yeah.
The math is not in Baker Mayfield's favor. My guy had a 7.2% touchdown rate last year. I may have brought this up on the podcast before. That is absurdly high. League average is usually like high 4s, mid to high 4s. Baker Mayfield has been well below this. Even the season prior, in which he was quite good with the Bucks, he was 2% lower than this, more than 2% lower than this. And that doesn't sound like all that much. When you throw the ball 570 times, which he did, that's a lot of touchdowns that falls off if this touchdown rate drops. And I say if, to be somewhat kind. It is going to fall off, Laquan. There is literally no chance that this touchdown rate does not plummet this year. The guys who post touchdown rates like this multiple seasons in a whole career, let alone in consecutive years, are like Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
So Baker Mayfield is good. I really like Baker Mayfield as a quarterback. I think he's a franchise quarterback. I believe in him. I think that he could take a team to a Super Bowl if the team was built right. I obviously don't think he's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but I think he is good. Great competitor. But this is just simply isn't happening again. His efficiency is going to come down big time. And I think that the volume is also going to come down because he hit a career high in attempts last year. And Liam Cohen is now gone. I don't like that for the offense. And when you hit career highs and things, it is just typically the case that those will regress a little bit. So if the volume regresses and then this touchdown regresses, we're talking about far fewer fantasy points off of those numbers alone. Last year, if you apply a league average touchdown rate to his very high volume, he throws 15 fewer touchdown passes. That's how absurd this touchdown rate is. So I think he's losing volume and losing that efficiency, which means we might lose 15 to 20 touchdowns from his 41 last year. And being in the low to mid, maybe high 20s is much more Baker Mayfield than being at 41. So he is not going to post these numbers. This is another one where I can see the argument for certain things. There is no argument here, guys. Okay. There is no argument. He is not going to post these numbers again. So the question is, does he post much fewer to the point where he falls below QB8 back into the high-end QB2 range? And I feel like that's more likely than not, but I know for sure he's not finishing as a QB8. And the guys after him get me way more excited. I had to go through the list, Laquan, to see where do I actually end up feeling good about Baker. These are the guys coming after Baker in underdog ADP. Kyler Murray? Yes, give me Kyler Murray. Bo Nix? Yeah, give me Bo Nix. Justin Fields? Yes, give me Justin Fields. Yeah. Brock Purdy? Easily. Caleb Williams? I think that's a toss-up because I think he's also overrated. I don't think his ADP should be this high. Maybe I take Baker there. But then you got Dak Prescott? Give me Dak Prescott. You got Drake May? I think it's close. You got Jared Goff. I think they're basically the same guys. So it's a toss-up between Baker and Jared Goff for me. Then you get to J.J. McCarthy, where I would lean Baker. Jordan Love. That's close. And then I'm taking Baker for sure. But that is like 8 to 10 names coming well after Baker that I feel somewhat similarly to or better about than Baker. This one is crazy to me. I will not be finding any Baker Mayfield on my rosters at this price, even if I'm trying to build a sick Buccaneer stack in best ball, which is a fun idea. I just can't do it with this ADP. It does not make sense. The math does not allow it. Sign me out.
Oh, man. I'm right with you. We got to close the door on Baker because you named some names that I just get all excited before to make them my QB1. Man, you said Kyler Murray. You said Bo Nix. Even Dak Prescott. This does not make sense. This ADP is completely wrong. And I feel like some of the folks out there in the fantasy streets forget that Liam Cohen's with Duval. This is one of those things that isn't factoring. Like that ADP at QB7 reflects is as if Liam Cohen's still in the building. And where the drop-off really, really happens is the touchdown department. Because if you realize in that first year Baker got there, you know, he looked it great. He looked it good, but he was not a QB7 good. His ADP right now is very, very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. And like how you mentioned with those stacks, he's part of that risk to get that stack. You would need the 41 touchdowns to repeat to have that stack justify for the rest of those ADPs. Because again, you're still going to have to pay somewhat of a pretty coin for Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans stack. You're going to have to pay a pretty coin to get that Bucky Irvin stack included in that Baker Mayfield. So there's risk in a lot of factors here just from 3 players to make that stack and to make this fantasy roster strong with your cores. God, Okada, we got to close the door on Baker Mayfield, man. Woo, that's a terrible way to end the show. kind of negative.
I know, because I like him. Oh, I
We
should
like
have ended
him.
with Garrett
Great
Wilson.
guy.
This is
See, ah,
this is
see.
honestly on me because I hate Garrett Wilson's guts. I don't really, but for fantasy, and I like Baker.
Oh,
Sorry, Baker, you're my boy. I hope you
yeah,
have a
man.
decent season, but you're not being as good as you were last year.
Hopefully, once folks start getting back outside with these drafts and redraft leagues, man, that his ADP kind of just drops. And like, there's always that chance. Like right now, we're going off of Underdog's ADP, and this is what people drafting months prior to us talking about this on the show. So maybe his ADP drops under a Kyler Murray, under a Bo Nix, maybe under a Patrick Mahomes. Of like how this is honestly looking like it really, really looks like real nasty work here. But man, this has been an exciting show, man. I love the suit and ties, the glasses. We came suited and booted and ready to talk some ADP reviews. And people, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys are tapping in with the FTN show. If you are new here, please stay and show up next week because it will be here at the same time. Every time we are going to be spitting fire content only. It's your boy LQ, Mr. Real Deal Fantasy HQ. You see the face, you know the case. And my guy, Matt Okada, man, I can't wait to see what come out next week with another article on the FTNFantasy.com, man. Make sure you guys are subscribing. Get those subscriptions up, man. You want to be prepared for those drafts coming up. And again, we'll see you next week for another great episode. Peace.
Adios.